Hey there, welcome to the last episode of season 2 of My Solopreneur Life. In this episode, I'm just going to kind of recap what we talked about and kind of some of the breakthroughs that I had in season 2, which was all about starting, as well as all the cool guests that we had and all the cool things. And I have some prompts for you on starting. And then I want to give you a sneak peek at what's coming for season 3. So enjoy this show, the bookend for season 2. Welcome to My Solopreneur Life. I'm Terry Pappy, your gracious host, and I am so glad you're here. I have a wonderful episode for you. Sit back, relax, and let's have some real talk about what it is to be a solopreneur. I can't believe this is the 19th episode of season 2 of My Solopreneur Life. And when I look back at when I started this at the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, just really get excited about this podcast and blah, blah, blah. And I get into each season and I keep coming up with ideas on what I can continue to talk about, even though I pick a season theme. And it's just, there's so many aspects that I've had experience myself as a solopreneur, plus the work I do with my clients who are also solopreneurs. So I'm really glad I was able to impart a lot of that to you if you've been listening to this particular season. Plus, it was the first season where I actually invited in some guests, and I had some great guests in this particular season, and I really had a lot of fun. Some of them I had to do a two-parter because I wouldn't let them go. It's like Pia Silva, for example, was one of the people that I just did not want to get off the microphone with. I mean, I felt like I just wanted to, grab her for a day, just, which you can actually do. But she is so generous with me when it comes to coming on my show. And it was the third time I've had her on the mic, and I just love it. So she was on twice on my last podcast. Anyway, and Harry Travis with his solopreneur story, which was a really, really good one. That was a two-parter as well. And of course, Dale L. Roberts, he had to be in two parts. So these are my favorite ones because I just kept going on and on and on. And you know how I am. I just, I get ideas as I listen to them because I don't have an outline or anything. I don't have a script or topics or whatever other than the theme of the season. And I just get going and I get so intrigued by what they say. That always triggers a follow-up question. And I think a lot of that comes from one of my natural talents, which is inquiry. One of my clients is going through a process of setting up some new software and trying to decide what platform to use. So she's been interviewing a lot of these vendor types who are like, oh yeah, we use our platform, we're the best, and use our platform, we're the best. It's really interesting watching these recordings, how blatant they are about their sales process. And I remember connecting with her after I listened to them to give her my feedback and say, this is what I think this particular vendor would be good at that. But I commented that I was really disappointed that they didn't ask her more questions about her business. Like, don't they really want to know if it's a true fit by doing probing questions? And I know I'm kind of going off in a tangent here, but this is so important when it comes to starting your business, having sales calls. I love the process of inquiry. And one of the services I provide is qualitative research for my clients' customers. And I'll go and I'll get on the phone with them and I'll have lots of questions about their experience working with my client, et cetera. And it really helps me develop strategies in the communication approach. Anyway, in this episode, what I'd like to talk about is just refresh what we covered in the season on starting. And I want to give you a couple of prompts that, in addition to the prompts that were associated with a lot of my individual episodes, granted, some of the interviews and my guests weren't necessarily prompt oriented, but I'm sure they triggered things that made you hopefully think and revisit in your own business as you're moving forward on your one-person business journey. What I really found a consistent theme with all of these episodes, not just the ones I did, but every episode, was how important it is to distinguish the act of starting. And it doesn't necessarily, and I think I covered this pretty good in the episodes, it doesn't necessarily mean to be like, okay, I just left my corporate job, I'm going to start my own business. I mean, that's like in the most literal sense, starting is all about that. And there are definitely a lot of things that you need to consider, which we did cover in this season. But at any point in your journey, and this applies to every phase of life, everything you're taking on, whether it's personal, professional, relationship-based, with your own physical well-being, starting something needs to have a distinct moment. And understanding why you're doing something. What is the intention that you have when you're starting? Like, why am I starting this? What's the intention I have coming into this decision to maybe get in better shape or lose weight or clean up my backyard because there's too many weeds, or whatever that thing is that you want to take on, that you want to start? What is the intention? What is the mindset? What is the story that you have around that? And starting can happen at multiple points in the life cycle of your business. Obviously, the starting the business itself is the biggest, most obvious one. But there are points, like I look back on my journey in my business, and there were very pivotal moments. Like in the beginning, I was like Terry Pappy Creative Services. That was my business name or my moniker. And I didn't really have a business model or a very distinct brand from the standpoint of my approach. Basically, I was lumping myself in with every other Tom, Dick, and Harry web designer, logo designer, strategist, etc. And that didn't help me in the beginning. But as I worked with clients, I started seeing distinct patterns in their behavior, what they were bringing to me, and how I approached fixing it. Qualitative research was one of the things that really helped me define what Better 3 is today, which is better understanding, better communications, and better relationships. And that is my Venn diagram, which is a healthy business when you bring all of those aspects into play, especially when you're communicating and delivering service. For me, that was a starting moment. Like, I was starting to see that I was getting commoditized. I was selling by the hour, like this is my hourly rate. And so I'd get compared based on my hourly rate, not anything else, because I didn't have any other way to distinguish myself, right? So when I started seeing these patterns and I developed the Better 3 model and how I approach working with my clients, that was a starting point. I was starting to see that pattern. And so I'm like, okay, it's time to start a new brand, a new positioning statement, and how I talk about what I do needs to change. And the hourly rate needs to go away. Let's just get rid of that, right? So that's what I did, and that was a starting moment. Whenever you are approaching these turnstiles or these opportunities to do something a little different or diverge into a new direction or a new market or add something to your business that addresses a common problem, like a pattern, that you're seeing that your typical client usually has or customer usually has. And that way you can bring that much more value to it. So that's kind of like the prompt I want to leave you with is when you're looking at those moments, it can also be a moment where you're inspiring yourself to take on one of these new aspects or projects or do something a little differently or get rid of something and streamline something else. Those are all starting opportunities. When you take that and say, okay, examine that, like take a moment to examine, why am I doing this? This is the starting point for this new thing that I'm taking on. Why am I doing it? What is my mindset around it? What is my intention? Like, help me understand that this is the purpose, this will be the outcome. The intention I have is that it's going to be successful. You want to go in with a positive, open mindset. And then what are some of the good things that'll come out of it when you're on the other side? And so it's like you're preparing for nothing but success when you go into those moments and have the opportunity to start something, but start it in the right moment of intention, mindset, and all those good things that I just mentioned. What was really interesting in some of the guest conversations that I had in this season was everybody kind of started differently. And I want to emphasize this as you have to figure out, you have to know yourself and figure out what is going to work for you. What are the aspects that make it important to you? Why are you doing it? Understand that it's okay to not have it be perfect. It's okay to ask for help in moving things forward once you start. So there are a lot of things, I think sometimes we have a tendency to be a little hard on ourselves. I know I've fallen into that trap quite a bit. I'm a little bit older and wiser now, and I don't fall into that trap quite as much. In fact, when I talk to my boyfriend, Doug, I'm like, rah, 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 when I get myself all wrapped around the axle about something not going my way. He's like, you're doing a really good job, and you really don't have to worry about that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. And so sometimes it just takes the voice of reason to help balance you out when it comes to those things. And that's me. That's why we make such a good couple. But the interesting thing about my guest interviews is whenever I interview anybody, even like right now as I'm talking, I have no notes or anything. I just talk. And I'm sure you're like, yeah, we know, Terry. You just get behind the mic and you just go on and on and on. We know. That's why we play you at 1.5 speed. I'm sorry, I'm in a giddy mood. I was just fascinated with some of these stories of my guests and how they started, what were their circumstances, what were they thinking, how that has evolved. And that was the most remarkable state, because you don't want to get a guest on and have them give you their resume or say, well, I remember when I was blah, blah, blah. It's like sometimes I even get tired of my own story when I am a guest on someone else's podcast, which I was actually a guest earlier today and had a blast. I mean, as you can imagine, I had a lot to talk about. And she's like, yeah, this is just a 30-minute podcast. So like I gave her like an hour's worth of content, but sorry. I'm sorry. I just have a good time, right? I hope you're laughing with me. But I was just so inspired by what these folks overcame, how things opened up for them because they were doing something that they were excited about, that they were passionate about, that they had intention on doing well, and a lot of the things that they learned along the way. And in this season, I also talked about some best practices when you're starting, like making sure your finances are good so you're not stressed out about that. I hope you were able to listen to all the episodes, all 18 of the episodes. I know that's a lot, but I just had a great time, and it's a great topic, and I loved having my guests, so I hope you enjoyed it. Now, this is what's coming. So season 3 of My Solopreneur Life is going to be all about confident selling and really turning fears into clients. And one of the most important things that you need to get a handle on is sales. You have got to get a handle on how you bring in revenue to your business, because you ain't going to have a business if you can't sell stuff, right? Being able to understand what is selling, why do you sell yourself, and what mechanisms can you put in place to help you in sales? There's a lot of different things that you can do, from sales training to having a mentor to recording your sales calls so you can learn from them, reading sales books. I even wrote a book on sales. Yes, I did. Confident Entrepreneur, Guide to Selling. It's actually hilarious. And sales is something that I have always struggled with. And it kind of parallels my ick factor around self-promotion and marketing my own services. I resist that, and I don't want to push what I do on anybody. It's just one of those things where I feel like I'm bothering somebody, and that directly impacts my sales. And so that's why I don't really market my stuff. I just put a ton of content, hopefully great content, helpful content out there to help inspire and drive people to greater success faster by saving them the aggravation of figuring out on their own. And that's what this podcast is all about. When it comes to sales, there's usually some really big mindset issues and stories about what selling means, aspects around, am I worthy of being paid for what I do? And which is so ironic, because many of us get in these corporate jobs And we're fine with it because we're being paid for doing what we're good at, right? We're hired to do a job. We go and do it. We get the paycheck. We're happy, right? But something changes when you have your own business. It becomes incredibly personal. It's like you're selling yourself versus just doing work. And it's such an important distinction to understand because it affects the psyche of how you approach sales, of what you're attracting from the standpoint of the vibe you're putting out there, and how people are going to be receiving you and perceiving you based on your whole mindset, your attitude, and your thinking and your story around who you are when it comes to selling and providing value to people. And every now and again, it'll creep into my awareness around like the worthiness and the value. And whenever I get into a sales conversation, and if I start to turn pitchy, which really doesn't happen anymore, not that I really was good at it before, but when I hear other people doing their sales pitches, and like I said, I've had the opportunity to listen to some of my clients' vendor recordings, and it just turns me off. I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I want to be a relationship seller, a relationship builder, and really understand who my prospects and clients are. And so that's kind of like how I've figured it out. But in season 3, I'm going to be talking a lot about selling, and not just tactically, but really understanding what happens when you get on a sales call. How do you get that person on a sales call? And what are you really trying to do? Are you trying to hit them hard and close them? Are they a warm lead? Are they a cool lead? How did you get them? Do you have a funnel that brings them in as a semi-warm lead? Is it a referral? Do you have a referral program? So I want to cover a lot of different things in a broad sense, but also in a detailed sense from a practical, tactical aspect. So you can go in to your sales conversations with a lot more confidence and knowing that it's okay to screw up. Believe me, I've done that numerous times. It's okay to not have a perfect sales call, and it's also okay to do it your way. A lot of people get out there and they take a sales training program. I know I've done plenty. Sandler in particular was one. And you got to go through the submarine, and you got to build rapport, and then you check on budget. And I mean, it's like, it just feels so robotic to me. And yes, are these important steps that you need to make sure those boxes are checked? Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps the process. Plus, it makes it more functional and structured for the person that you're helping make a decision whether or not to work with you. So there's so many different aspects I'm going to be covering in this upcoming season, and I will invite some guests. Right now, I don't have any scheduled, but I want to see how the content goes. I got 12 episodes of topics that I'm already ready to do that are just going to kind of get me started. So I'm really excited about that whole thing. And this is what I want. So I gave you a prompt based on season 2, but I want you in preparation for season 3, which is coming next week, debuting next week, season 3 of My Solopreneur Life, featuring Crazy Terry on the mic. What I would like for you to do is assess your sales prowess. Take a look at the sales conversations that you've had. And if you're just starting out and you really haven't had any, I encourage you to practice on some folks and make a list of the things that come up for you. And then if you're practicing with someone, have them give you some constructive feedback. What did they like? What did they not like? What were they unclear on? You have to get to a point in a sales conversation where you ask for money in exchange for your service or product. And this is more so in response to a service-based business versus product, which is more like commoditized online shopping, e-commerce. And that's a whole different type of selling, which is more around the tactical presentation of the products that you're selling. And I don't really get into a lot of that because most of my clients are service-based businesses, and the flexibility that you have in a service-based business is so much richer because it's relationship-based. Anyway, so what I'd like for you to do is just assess how you are in sales. How do you feel when you're on a sales call? How do you prepare for sales call? what are the tools that you're using during a sales call, if you are using any tools like a guide, or here's my Sandler submarine that I use to go through. So I remember all the steps I have to go through when I have this conversation, and what has worked and what doesn't work. In other words, what's your failure rate? What's your success rate? How prepared does your prospect need to be when they come into that call? So that way you're not having to explain everything about how you work and blah, blah, blah. You want to focus on their business, what they're trying to accomplish in their life. So that way you know how to cater your value proposition to suit and solve their problem. And that way you know if you can even solve it. So if you don't know what problem they're having and really understand it at a pretty good level, then you're just trying to grab money at that point. You have to know that you can solve their problem, that you can help them live a better life and either make money, increase their status, save time, or save efficiency, right? Those are like the main drivers of anyone making a decision around spending money on any type of service. When you look at sales from that perspective, you can come into this next season kind of prepared to make the most of what I'll be basically talking about. And I think it's going to be really helpful. I know it will help your sales success rate. It'll also help you feel better when you're on a prospect call. There's a lot of things that kind of mind map out from it, such as how are you presenting your services? Are they productized? Do you charge by the hour? So there's a lot of it that's also influenced by how you run your business. I don't know that I'm going to get into that too much, but we'll see. You never know, because, I just kind of go off in these tangents sometimes, as you well know if you're a regular listener. So that's it. That's what's coming, and I'm super jazzed about being able to talk about selling. And there you have it. So thanks for listening to season 2. If you didn't catch all the episodes, please go back and check them out, especially my guest interviews. They were so fun and very different perspectives, which I love. I love having more texture and variety versus just me droning on and on and on, as you well know. Regardless, I'm so glad you're here and you're partaking in what I'm putting out there. And thanks for doing that. I really appreciate your time. See you soon. Well, I know you're disappointed, but that's it for this episode. Listen, the great news is there's another one coming, so stay tuned. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you do the prompt if this episode had a prompt and you get that homework done because you're going to be a better solopreneur. How's that for a maternal finger shaking at you? Hey, listen, thanks so much for being here, for giving me time of your day, and, for taking it on. So if you want to learn more and stay connected with me, just head on over to mysolopreneurlife.com. Thanks a bunch. See you soon. That was pretty good. I think I'll keep that one.